Intimate partner violence. It's something that can shatter a family unit, leaving a community in mourning. And today we're learning that this issue is a growing one here in Ontario. CityNews Chief Correspondent Cynthia Mulligan joining us now in studio. Cynthia, thank you so much for being with us here today. You are reporting on a heartbreaking story of one mother who, in the wake of her daughter's death 1 year ago, is looking to share her story. Let's talk about this daughter of hers, Sahara, first.
So Sarah met her husband at that point, a boyfriend, when she was just 18 years old. And her mother knew within 6 weeks something was wrong because she saw a big bruise on her thigh. And she said to her daughter, "What was that?" And she said, "Oh, he was just flicking me to get my attention." And the mother said to her, "That wasn't a flick." And so for the next 18 years, she watched in horror as Sarah showed signs of deep abuse, and the family was so very worried about her. And when she was 36, a year ago, she was murdered, and her husband, her former husband, is now facing charges of first-degree murder. And Fatouma Kuso is her mother. She's incredibly eloquent, and we had a long conversation about her daughter, and it was trying to get into her daughter's mind, like what was happening. But this is what she has to say about the terrible situation her daughter was in and how difficult the family found it to try and get her out.
She was bruised and battered, and she was too embarrassed to show up. And she would only come home and contact us when she could put enough makeup to cover it up. It was getting worse and worse, and you could see it. It's a loss that's so predictable and preventable. She called me a little bit after 6 o'clock on Friday, May 26th, telling me that she was just leaving for work and everything was great.
She remembers the last words her daughter said to her that night.
"I love you, Mom. See you Monday." That Monday never came.
Fatouma called this predictable and a preventable loss. It's so heartbreaking to hear those words coming from a mother here. And part of your conversation with her was about how the family was trying to get her help, but that was quite challenging for them.
Fatouma told me that she called hundreds and hundreds of times trying to get help for her daughter, different services. And I spoke to somebody sort of on the front lines of this who said to me, it is often the family that does know, and it is so hard for them to get help because to access help, the survivor has to come forward. And very often they're not ready to come forward because they are emotionally, mentally, physically beaten down, as we heard about Sarah, her daughter. So it's just this horrible, horrible situation for families. And there's no solution. And this one frontline worker said this is actually a flaw in our system right now, that we can't support the families enough. But what do? You can't have police go and take her against her will if she's not ready. And you have to remember, it's so very complex. A lot of these women they're afraid, or they are mentally abused as well as physically abused. The two go hand in hand, really. Or they also love their husband and they don't want to leave. Many also in this economic climate, they have nowhere to go, especially if they have children. They can't afford to leave. There are so many layers to this situation, and every single one of them is tragic.
And for Sarah, there was that glimmer of hope at one moment, and just right before she died. Walk us through how she tried to leave. And a lot of times advocates say this is the most dangerous time for a victim.
So her mother tells me she had tried to leave 11 times and over the years. And this time, it seemed she was finally really leaving. She changed her job so he couldn't find her. She used a different phone so he couldn't track that phone. She didn't move in with family because he knew where they all lived. She moved into a women's crisis shelter, and this is all in Windsor. And she had been there just under 3 weeks. And she called her mother on that Friday night. She was doing well. She was going to her new job. And she said, "I'll see you Monday." But she disappeared that night. And yes, it is the most dangerous time. He probably sensed she was really leaving this time. And that is the most dangerous time for a woman to leave.
I can't imagine the devastation for her mother, Fatouma, to come out and speak about their experiences 1 year later. Why is it so important for her to share not only the family story, but give Sarah a voice?
She says one woman's death is too many. She calls this an epidemic. She is very vocal, incredibly powerful and eloquent. And she just wants to raise awareness that, you know, her concerns was her daughter went to the hospital many times. Her daughter had a therapist. Doctors knew. She said so many people knew, and yet she still couldn't be saved. And that she says nobody listened until her daughter was dead. And she wants to change that so that there are other ways that a person can be helped before it is too late. I don't know what the answer is. I've been asking a lot of different people, what is the answer to this? The problem is the system is still works under the theory that the woman has to come forward, she has to, you know, have police lay charges, and that she has to be willing to move into a shelter before anything can be done to help her.
Well, you're doing important work here. You're telling important stories, so we thank you so much here. So this is a two-part investigation into intimate partner violence. Make sure you tune in tonight on City News at 5 and 6 to hear this incredibly important report from Cynthia. Cynthia, thank you so much.
Thank you, Faiza.